ladies and gentlemen. It's your buddy kidThunder back again with a video response. This is actually a tag response video. Yeah, excuse the lighting right here. About to turn the light on. About to brighten the lights up in a bit. Hold 1 second. Alright, I am back again, and yeah, he just came out with another open tag video, and this open tag video was mainly regarding about what is my most favorite and least favorite Super Nintendo and Genesis games. Well, put it this way, Rob, first off, I'd like to say I'm a fan of both systems. I happen to own both systems, even though back in the day I didn't own either one of them, because back in the day I obviously had a original NES, and you know, I couldn't afford a Super Nintendo or Genesis back in the day, unlike how I could afford it now. Excuse me. Yeah, so first off, I would like to say this, like, I mean, to put this video up in a nutshell, what can I say? The Super Nintendo and Genesis, both consoles really have an unbeatable library of games. So it's hard to tell, you know, which one is my favorite, which one is my least favorite out of both of them. But anyways, starting off with the Genesis side. Yeah, I mean, here are two of my most favorite ones that I really like to play. I mean, obviously Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I mean, pretty much everybody knows that. I mean, if you had a Sega Genesis back in the day, this game was obviously required to own. I mean, to own for your Genesis and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I mean, you know, what's even cooler about this one, even though I haven't beaten it yet, but I've seen gameplay footage of it, and from what I've heard is that, you know, the ending is pretty much the same whether or not you get all the Chaos Emeralds and whatnot in this game. So, I mean, and if anything, to me, I do feel that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is probably like the best Sonic game that was probably ever made, in my opinion. I mean, but yeah. I mean, another one of my favorites is Rocket Knight Adventures, but I mean, due to this recording, you know, I won't be able to have time to pull it out and whatnot. But I mean, I know I got it, obviously, but I just won't be able to pull it out. I'm just only gonna, you know, pull a few of them, pull like 2 of my favorite Genesis games out. Another favorite Genesis game I like to play is this game, Streets of Rage 2. Yes. Now, obviously, I remember playing the first Streets of Rage game, you know, back on the Game Gear, and not to mention, I remember playing it on the Genesis as well. And, you know, I've obviously had a blast of playing. I mean, pretty much I played the Genesis version more than the Game Gear version anyway. And that's pretty much it. Like, Streets of Rage, what I have to say, I pretty much have a lot to say about Streets of Rage 2. Mainly is because, you know, it's pretty much the absolute best, I mean, beat 'em up. Now, I know some people might say, oh, kidThunder, you're a Streets of Rage fanboy and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, not really. I mean, I've enjoyed other beat 'em ups. I mean, back in the day too. I mean, shoot, like on my Super Nintendo, I got like, I mean, I have, I mean, so much pleasure playing, you know, all the three Jalico beat 'em ups, or Jalico. I mean, actual pronouncing I believe is Jalico. But yeah, I mean, I've had a blast playing every single Jalico beat 'em up on the Super Nintendo, and I mean, I obviously liked all the Final Fight games, so, and of course Double Dragon and, you know, every other beat 'em up, you know, from here on out. But yeah, Streets of Rage 2 is awesome. I mean, but even on the Genesis, I've played, you know, I played Maximum Carnage, which I happen to own, uh, and you know, I've even played Golden Axe. I mean, for those who didn't know, I've recently done a cover of the boss theme song from the first Golden Axe game. Um, yeah, since I am a chiptune artist, obviously. But now, as far as like what's my least favorite Genesis game, or my least liked Genesis game I've ever played, on the Sega Genesis, um, I did happen to play The Incredible Hulk. I've have it, and tell you the truth, like Incredible Hulk, yeah, the game was hard as balls, to tell you the truth. And but once you get to the final stage of the game, when you beat the final boss is just a complete flat out joke. I mean, now I don't know about you, but if you go on YouTube right now and you type in the search bar entitled the easiest boss in the history of video games, guaranteed you'll see gameplay footage of the Incredible Hulk for the Sega Genesis. Uh, yeah, I mean, now keep in mind I've actually beat that game via the game. I mean, using the Game Genie. Yes, and that's how I basically got my way through that game. Anyway, at the time when I beat it, but I mean, another least favorite Genesis game I really have the pleasure to hate, um, Toxic Crusaders. Now, I've had that game one time. It was an alright game. I can't. I mean, I remember doing a review of it 2 years ago, but I took it down because I hated how the way it turned out, so to speak, at the time when I composed that video review. I mean, but I mean, it was on my external hard. It was on my external hard drive before it died out recently, basically, and I actually have to get it soon. So I have to get me a whole new external hard drive anyway. But yeah, two of my least liked Genesis games was Incredible Hulk and Toxic Crusaders. Um, um, as far as like now onto the Super Nintendo side. Now this one, the Super, even though back in the day I wasn't too, I kind of wasn't too much into Super Nintendo, but even though I did have the pleasure of playing Super Mario World, uh, and as well as Super Mario All Stars. Now, which are obviously one of my, I mean, both of those games are one of my favorites on the Super Nintendo. Yes, I currently have Super Mario World. I recently ordered Super Mario All Stars for the Super Nintendo off Amazon.com and whatnot. So yeah, and even though they do have the Wii version, but obviously the Wii version of Super Mario All Stars isn't really all that worth it. Why? It's because, I mean, it felt like this was just a straight port of of a game that was like nearly of a game that's like 18 years old and stuff like that. But yeah, I cannot. But yeah, Super Mario World. That's one of my favorite Super Nintendo games. Even though I have Super Mario All Stars coming along the way. Another one of my favorite Super Nintendo games I have the pleasure of playing is Contra 3: The Alien Wars. Now, I know back in the day, Contra, if you played Contra on the NES, like Contra and Super Contra, well, the first Contra, yeah, it was hard, even though you had the 30 lives code and things like that. Super Contra was even harder, but then you didn't have that 30 lives. They didn't put the 30 lives cheat. Now, Contra 3 on Super Nintendo, oh shoot, it's hard. And if you also look at it now, every other Contra game that was released thereafter, it's hard. I mean, it's not easy, man. And another game I have the pleasure of playing on the Super Nintendo is this game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. Now, this game was released on the Super Nintendo, original Nintendo, and Genesis. Now, if you thought all those versions of the game are the same, no. I mean, those games are three completely different versions developed by three completely different teams in-house at Konami. So yeah, I mean, what's TMNT Tournament Fighters all about? Well, if you play this game, you will notice that this is actually, in my opinion, this is actually like a better version of Street Fighter 2. I mean, I cannot help but to say that it is. I mean, it's pretty fun to play, obviously. So, and that's primarily it. Now, as far as least liked Super Nintendo games, well, I really can't say anything about that because I don't really remember playing any bad Super Nintendo games during my childhood, mainly because I didn't have a Super Nintendo at the time. But I did happen to like, I mean, there was RoboCop versus the Terminator on Super Nintendo, even though the Genesis version was obviously more remembered. I mean, I'll probably do a review of that game sometime in the future. But, I mean, another game I liked on the Super Nintendo was Space Megaforce. I've done a review of that early this year, which was my first review of 2011, obviously. And that's primarily it right there. So, first video game. So there you have it. Please comment, rate, subscribe, share the word. Send me a video response, or you could send MaximumRD's video response. I have the link to the original video in the description box. Talk to you later. I'll have a review in about 2 weeks.